Junction, you probably noticed it right away. Those three sisters kept changing. First it was one Billy Joe, then another. Suddenly, Bobby Joe had a new face, too. And just when you got used to one version, another actress took over. It was confusing, even a little weird. For years, fans just shrugged it off. Maybe it was scheduling conflicts. Maybe they just wanted to try something new. But now, we finally know the real reason those main characters kept leaving. And it goes far deeper than anyone expected. Behind the smiles and small-town charm, there were personal struggles, career battles, and decisions that completely changed the course of the show. And once you hear the full story, you will never look at Petticoat Junction the same way again. At the heart of Petticoat Junction was one steady, comforting presence. Kate Bradley. Played by Bee Benaderet, she was the no-nonsense, big-hearted mother who ran the shady rest hotel and kept her three daughters and Uncle Joe from spiraling into chaos. For many viewers, she was the emotional center of the show. So when Kate started appearing less and less in later seasons, fans were confused. And then, suddenly, she was just gone. What most viewers did not know at the time was that Bee Benaderet had been privately battling lung cancer. Diagnosed in the mid-1960s, she continued filming as long as she could, even while undergoing radiation treatment. At first, producers adjusted her shooting schedule and limited her scenes. But, as her health declined, she was written out of several episodes entirely, and her absence was barely explained on screen. Behind the scenes, there was a quiet understanding that Bee's condition was serious, but the studio chose not to publicly address it. There were whispers in the press, but no official statement. In one especially uncomfortable move, the writers even tried bringing in a temporary mother figure character, Dr. Janet Craig, played by June Lockhart, before Bee had passed. It was a decision that felt premature, and some cast members were reportedly upset by how quickly the show tried to move on. Bee Benaderet passed away in October of 1968. When news of her death broke, fans were devastated. She was only 62. The show tried to carry on, but her absence was impossible to ignore. The warmth and balance she brought to the screen simply could not be replaced, and her passing left more than just an emotional gap. It created a ripple effect across the entire cast. Because without Bee, everything started to unravel. When Petticoat Junction first hit television screens in 1963, Janine Riley lit up the set as Billy Joe Bradley, the oldest of the three sisters. She had the looks, the charm, and just enough sass to make her stand out. Viewers quickly grew attached to her performance, and it seemed like she was made for the role. So when she disappeared after just 2 seasons, fans were left scratching their heads. Why would someone walk away from a hit show at its peak? The truth is, Janine Riley never really felt at home in the part. While audiences saw her as the vibrant blonde on a sunny sitcom, she had more serious ambitions behind the scenes. She had trained as a dramatic actress and wanted roles with more depth, gritty, challenging characters that allowed her to stretch her talent. Playing a small-town beauty with limited development was not exactly the career she had in mind, and it was not just about creative dissatisfaction. According to reports from the time, Riley was also clashing with producers over the direction of her character. There were disagreements about the way Billy Joe was being written. Some insiders claimed she was uncomfortable with how one-dimensional the character had become. Others hinted at ongoing frustrations about the way the women on the show were portrayed in general. Riley reportedly pushed for better material, but the response she got was lukewarm at best. It's worth remembering that during the 1960s, actresses had little say in how their roles evolved. Many were hired for their looks first and their talent second. For Janine, who had studied theater and hoped to do more meaningful work, being boxed into a glamorous farm girl role felt limiting. She was ambitious, and she knew staying too long in a role like that could hurt her chances of breaking into film or serious television dramas. behind the scenes, her dissatisfaction grew, and the tension became harder to ignore. So, by the end of Season 2, Janine made the decision to leave. It was not dramatic, it was not scandalous, but it was definitive. She packed up and moved on, hoping to take on projects that offered more range and artistic respect. The studio, of course, did not want to lose Billie Joe, so instead of writing the character out, they simply recast her. Enter actress number 2, Gunilla Hutton, who stepped in without much explanation. But Gunilla's run would not last long either, because just one season later, Petticoat Junction would find itself looking for yet another Billie Joe, and the revolving door would keep on spinning. While Billie Joe may have been the show's glamorous big sister, Bobby Joe was the soft-spoken bookworm, the sweetheart of the trio, and for the show's earliest fans, Pat Woodell was the Bobby Joe. Her gentle voice, thoughtful expressions, and wholesome charm gave the character a quiet strength that made her stand out, even among louder personalities. But much like her co-star, Janine Riley, Pat's time on Petticoat Junction was surprisingly brief. After just 2 seasons, she was gone. At the time, her exit received little attention. No farewell episode, no dramatic send-off, just another replacement actress stepping into the role, almost as if nothing had changed. But the real reason behind Pat Woodell's departure tells a very different story, one that had less to do with television and everything to do with music. You see, Pat had dreams of becoming a singer, and not just as a side project, music was her true passion. During her time on Petticoat Junction, she had occasionally performed musical numbers, sometimes even alongside the other sisters, in musical skits and short songs. But the show's format and writing simply did not give her the freedom or spotlight she craved. She felt creatively stifled, and so, after her second season, she made the bold decision to walk away and pursue a full-time career in music. What followed was a sincere, if challenging, attempt to break into the industry. Pat recorded singles and toured as part of a girl group called the Ladybugs, a 4-member act styled as a female parody of the Beatles. They even made an appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show, wearing mop-top wigs and matching outfits while singing lighthearted tunes. It was a clever gimmick, and it gained attention. But it did not launch the long-term career she had hoped for. Still, Pat remained committed. She later signed with Warner Brothers Records and released a solo album, but it struggled commercially. Though her voice was warm and technically strong, the market was already saturated with rising pop stars. And Pat's image was still tied to her sweet, small-town persona. Breaking out of the TV girl box proved to be harder than expected. Even so, Pat never expressed public regret about leaving Petticoat Junction. She had followed her passion, even when it meant walking away from fame. In later interviews, she spoke warmly about her time on the show, but it was clear she saw it as a stepping stone, not a destination. Eventually, she stepped away from the spotlight altogether. In the 1980s, Pat retired from acting and music completely. She spent the rest of her life focused on humanitarian causes and charitable work, far from the cameras, but still making an impact. Of course, the producers once again responded the same way they always did, by recasting the role. This time, they brought in Laurie Saunders, who would stay on as Bobby Joe for the remainder of the series. But viewers could feel the shift. Something about the dynamic had changed, and behind the scenes, the pressure on the replacement actresses was only beginning. By the middle of Petticoat Junction's run, the show's original magic had already begun to fade. Viewers might not have realized it at first, but the heart of the series, the chemistry between the 3 Bradley sisters, was being held together by replacement after replacement. And nowhere was the pressure more intense than on the shoulders of Laurie Saunders and Meredith McCrae. Laurie Saunders stepped in as the 3rd version of Bobby Joe, after Pat Woodell's quiet departure. Laurie brought a different kind of energy, bubblier, more outgoing and far less reserved than her predecessor. The producers leaned into this shift, writing Bobby Joe as more of a ditzy, comedic character. But for loyal fans who had loved Pat's quieter, thoughtful version, the change felt jarring. Laurie did her best to fill the role, and she stayed committed for the remainder of the series. Still, she often found herself navigating behind-the-scenes comparisons and pressure to lighten up the role in ways that sometimes clashed with her instincts. What made things even harder was how visible those changes were to the audience. In many sitcoms, character swaps happened behind the scenes, with minimal explanation. But in Petticoat Junction, the sisters were central to every episode. Fans noticed instantly when a new actress arrived, Laurie had to walk a very fine line, keeping Bobby Joe recognizable, while also making the character her own. It was a no-win situation, and she knew it. She later admitted in interviews that taking over the part came with an unspoken expectation to be someone she wasn't. Then came Meredith McRae, perhaps the most memorable Billy Joe for many longtime viewers. She was the third actress to play the part after Janine Riley and Gunilla Hutton, and by the time she arrived, the revolving door had become a running joke among fans. But Meredith brought stability. She was smart, poised, and had a natural confidence that helped ground the show in its later years. Still, the experience was not without its frustrations. According to several reports, Meredith clashed at times with the production team over creative direction. She wanted more meaningful storylines, stronger character development, and fewer recycled plots. But by the late 1960s, the show was already starting to coast. Scripts had become more formulaic, and there was little room for character growth. That disconnect reportedly left Meredith feeling creatively stuck. It did not help that Meredith came from a Hollywood family. Her father was Gordon MacRae, star of Oklahoma and Carousel. Her mother was Sheila MacRae, a Broadway and television performer in her own right. Growing up around show business, Meredith had high expectations for the quality of her work, and she was not shy about pushing for better material. That passion, while admirable, sometimes rubbed producers the wrong way. Behind the scenes, it was clear she wanted more than just a pretty face on a train platform. Adding to the pressure was the constant audience expectation that the new sisters would somehow fit perfectly into roles crafted by other actresses. Meredith and Laurie were not just acting. They were trying to maintain continuity, honor the original portrayals, and keep viewers invested, all while the show itself was beginning to lose steam. Eventually, Meredith made the choice to leave after season 7. It was a quiet but firm decision. She wanted more serious roles, and she knew that staying on a show in decline would not help her career move forward. Her departure marked a turning point. The cast had been reshuffled so many times that even loyal fans began to feel disconnected from the original charm. And while the characters on screen kept smiling, the reality behind the scenes was much more complicated. And through it all, only one main character had remained from the very beginning, Uncle Joe. Through all the casting changes, character swaps, and shifting storylines, one figure remained constant, Uncle Joe. Played by Edgar Buchanan, he was the lovable schemer, the comic relief, and in many ways, the show's unexpected anchor. While the actresses playing the Bradley sisters came and went, and even Kate Bradley herself was tragically written out, Uncle Joe was still there, lounging in his favorite chair at the Shady Rest, and cooking up his next get-rich-quick plan. But Edgar Buchanan's continued presence was not just about screen time, it was deeply personal. He had been close friends with Bee Benaderet for years, even before Petticoat Junction began. They had worked together on the Beverly Hillbillies, and their off-screen friendship added a real warmth to their on-screen chemistry as Kate and Uncle Joe. When Bee's health started to decline, Edgar was one of the few cast members who knew the full extent of her illness, and when she passed away in 1968, it hit him hard. Despite the emotional toll, Edgar stayed on the show. Some say he felt a sense of loyalty to Bee, to the fans, and to the role itself. But others close to the production suggested a different truth, that Edgar was deeply disillusioned by the direction the show was taking. After Bee's death, the writers gradually shifted the spotlight onto Uncle Joe, trying to keep viewers engaged. But the tone had changed. What had once been a wholesome, ensemble-driven series started to feel more like a patchwork of gags and last-minute fixes. In truth, Uncle Joe was never meant to carry the show. He worked best as a foil, a wild card who stirred up trouble while Kate kept things grounded. Without her, Edgar's character began to lose definition. The scripts leaned heavier on his comedy, sometimes pushing the character into exaggerated territory that even Buchanan found frustrating. He reportedly made subtle objections, but with the show already in decline, there was only so much he could do. Off-camera, Edgar was also dealing with health issues of his own. He was in his late 60s during the show's final years, and the long hours and repetitive storylines took their toll. Crew members noticed he seemed more tired, less talkative. But even then, he kept showing up, always on time, always professional. He knew the show needed at least one familiar face to hold things together, and he never wanted to let the audience down. By the final season, Edgar was in his late 60s, and the weariness showed. His performance, once full of sharp timing and sly humor, started to feel heavier, more mechanical, but fans still appreciated his presence. In many ways, he was the last link to the show's golden years. And while his loyalty helped hold things together on screen, it could not stop what was coming. Because outside the studio walls, CBS had made a decision that would change everything. By the early 1970s, a quiet storm was brewing inside CBS, one that would sweep away some of the network's most beloved shows in one fell swoop. Petticoat Junction was still airing, but the writing was already on the wall. Ratings were slipping. The cast had been overhauled multiple times, and even the most loyal viewers were beginning to feel like the show had lost its way. But the real blow came not from the audience, but from the network itself. In what would later be called the Rural Purge, CBS made the decision to cancel nearly all of its rural-themed programming in favor of more urban, socially conscious shows aimed at a younger, city-dwelling demographic. Executives believed that advertisers wanted more affluent, metropolitan viewers, not middle American families watching lighthearted farm comedies. And so, almost overnight, shows like Green Acres, The Beverly Hillbillies, and Petticoat Junction were quietly taken off the schedule. What made it sting even more was that Petticoat Junction was still pulling decent numbers compared to other CBS shows. It had loyal fans, it had a strong syndication presence, but none of that mattered. The show simply did not fit the new image CBS wanted to project, and the cast felt the shift before the acts officially dropped. Scripts became weaker, episodes were pieced together from recycled plot lines, and the writing staff was reduced. There was no longer any real effort to build meaningful story arcs or develop characters. Several insiders said it felt like the show was being set up to fail. By the final season, the energy was gone. Meredith McCrae had exited, Bee Benaderet had passed, and even Edgar Buchanan's scenes were scaled back. New characters were introduced in a last-ditch effort to spark interest, but it only confused viewers more. The heart of the show, the family bond at the Shady Rest Hotel, had been hollowed out. Then, without any real closure or farewell episode, CBS announced the cancellation. Just like that, Petticoat Junction was over. There was no reunion special, no retrospective, no goodbye tour. For a show that had once been one of CBS's crown jewels, its ending felt surprisingly cold. And yet, what made Petticoat Junction endure for so long was not just its setting or its storylines, but its cast, a group of talented, passionate actors who gave it their all, even when the deck was stacked against them. On the surface, Petticoat Junction was a cozy, cheerful sitcom about small-town life. It gave viewers comfort, laughs, and a sense of warmth that kept them coming back week after week. But behind that charm was a show constantly struggling to stay afloat, one where actors came and went, studio decisions clashed with personal dreams, and the loss of one beloved star left a hole that never truly healed. Bee Benaderet's passing marked the beginning of the unraveling. Her presence had grounded the show, and without her, everything else began to shift. Janine Riley left to pursue serious acting. Pat Woodell walked away for a chance at music. Meredith McCrae and Laurie Saunders tried to keep the momentum going, but faced the impossible task of filling roles fans had already attached themselves to. And through it all, Edgar Buchanan stayed on out of loyalty, even as the spark behind the camera faded. In the end, it was not just the actors who left, it was the soul of the show. The network's shift in priorities, the constant cast changes, and the refusal to slow down and let characters grow all took a toll. And when the final episode aired, it felt less like a conclusion and more like a quiet disappearance. Yet for all its struggles, Petticoat Junction still holds a special place in television history. It gave early opportunities to rising stars, brought families together around the TV screen, and created characters that fans still remember today. But now, you know the real story behind why those characters kept changing. It was not just television business as usual, it was personal, it was emotional, and it was a lot messier than it looked on screen.